Do you know, it's such a pleasure to have you in our little mini podcast.
It's a wonderful pleasure to be here, my bud.
You know what? I must tell you, it's the idea with this is to document the history of South African radio with the voices that are still around to tell the story. Because you know what, God didn't bless us with a endless life. At some point it has to stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And I felt the need to have a chat with people like yourselves. So just for you to be aware of this, I've had the likes of Koos Radebe, the founders of Metro.
Old friend of mine. I bumped into him the other day at Rand Park Golf Course.
I knew it had to do with golf. That's Koos for you.
Yeah.
I had Thomas, Bad Boy T. He was here, and he said, I was with Koos. We were playing golf. Everybody speaks like that about Koos.
Exactly.
And you're back on the radio.
Yeah. You know what? For the first time, I'm back on the radio, and for the first time in a long time, I'm having fun.
Wow.
Because I started off in the. I'm sorry if I'm presumptuous and just carrying on with the interview.
Yes.
But I started off in the 1980s, which was a really, really torrid time in the political history of this country.
Yes.
I finished school in 1981. I went to compulsory military service in 1982 and 83, and then I went to Rhodes University in 84. The reason why I went to Rhodes was at that stage the only formal education you could get to go into media was journalism.
Okay.
So I went down. I allegedly studied journalism.
Did you have anything else you wanted to do, though?
I did speech and drama as well.
Okay.
Because both of those offered courses in radio.
Okay.
So I got a Bachelor of the Victoria Hotel.
Yes.
Which is where we went to drink.
I like how you say it's a legend. You try not to take it serious.
No, radio's not serious. Media's not serious. We've got to have fun in it.
There's some kids whose parents are paying 80,000 rands a month thinking that their kid is serious.
Exactly. They're not. But then I joined. I was very fortunate. What they did is the Rhodes Journalism Department had they had a system where the top two students in the radio course in second year went to either 702 or to 604.
Wow, as a permanent gig? Or?
No, that was for over the Christmas break.
Okay.
As an intern.
Wow.
And those were the only two independent newsrooms in the country at the time.
That's amazing. That opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, 702 was registered in Bobotswana.
Yes.
And Capital was registered in Transkei.
In the Transkei, yeah.
So they were broadcasting from Umzimkulu in Transkei.
Okay.
Because what they'd done is the founders of those two stations had read the different acts available.
Yes.
And basically what they were saying is, okay, we've got a transmitter in Bobotswana from a 702 perspective, and Capital said, we've got a transmitter in Umzimkulu.
In Transkei, independent.
And they are independent homelands.
Yes.
So if you don't accept them as independent homelands, then you must scrap the entire homelands bill.
Yes, because then it's wrong.
Yeah,
you're lying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So the government at that time, the National Party government, couldn't do anything about those two stations, and we became a thorn in their sides because we had there were two newsrooms who were actually putting out independent news at that time.
Who were putting up, this is what's happening. This is what's really happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember because when I joined Capital, I did my internship, and they then offered me, after my third year, offered me a permanent position.
Wow.
And I went into the newsroom as what they call a copy taster in those days.
Okay.
And a copy taster in those days used to go into work at 3:15 in the morning, and you used to go through all of the Reuters and the SAPA copy that came out on the machines.
Yeah.
And you used to start throwing out the rubbish and putting together stories which the morning editor would probably use.
Yes, okay.
And we had a formidable newsroom in those days. I mean, people, people like Zahid Kachalia.
Yes.
who I think is now, he went off and started running Australian broadcasting, the radio section of Australian broadcasting.
That should tell you the talent.
Yeah.
Because Australia has always been renowned as a hub of a lot of great talent in radio.
Yeah. Zahid Kachalia, the late Manu Padiachi, David O'Sullivan, who's now with Kaya FM, James Lorimer, who's now a DA MP in Parliament.
Yes.
Paddy Clay. I mean, we had some really serious
great people. Yes, talent. I know. Charlie Rasmus, who's now with us at 2000.
That's it.
Yes, he always talks about those olden days of 604.
It's 604 and 702.
Yes. Wow.
So I started off working with independents. And I always have. I've never worked for the
national broadcaster.
No,
as a TV host.
As a TV host, I did, but that was a subcontract.
Yes, of course. Yes,
but I've never worked for the national broadcaster.
You almost did technically, because Highveld was bought from SABC.
That's correct.
And you joined them when in 1997.
97.
Yeah.
When Primedia bought.
Bought Highveld.
Bought Highveld.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll never forget, David.
Yeah.
When we bought Highveld, when Primedia bought Highveld, at that stage, Primedia paid 320 million rand for that license.
That's not small.
No, it wasn't. That was 1996.
Yes.
And at that stage, I can't remember the guy's name, but the person who was heading up sales at SABC said, "You are absolutely mad to buy it for that price, because there is no way that Highveld can ever make more than 52 million rand a year."
Because that's what they were doing
turnover.
with it. That means that's what they were able to make.
That's what they were doing. Yeah.
And I know how much it started making.
Well, by the end of my tenure in 2010 at Highveld, we were doing close to 1 billion rand.
I remember a report that showed 700 million rands, and that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. I want to go back to a time that you highlighted, and you'll be the first person I even speak to this about. Your military time. Tell me the call up to go and what your reaction was, or was it expected as a white South African? This is what you're going to do, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, you had no choice. You were called. You had to register for military service as a white male South African in Standard 8 at school. It was done through the school system. And you were then in the pool. And during the course of your matric year, you got your call-up papers.
Jeez.
And that was it. You
was it, yes.
You had two choices. No, actually you had three. You either went to the army and did your military service. It was conscription. If you refused to be conscripted, you went to jail for 6 years.
Jeez.
Or the other alternative was to actually flee the country.
Yes, and fight for liberation.
And get out of the country. So even if you went to university,
you still had...
As soon as you finished university,
they will say,
it kicked in again.
Komiso.
So it wasn't... I think a lot of people these days, we 25 years on now, out of apartheid. I think there is a perception that a lot of... that white male South Africans actually wanted to go to the army. We had no choice.
Yes, you were going to jail.
Yeah, exactly. You either went to jail or you fled the country of your birth,
or you hid somewhere, which was impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was a really difficult time for young. And you know what, David?
You were 18.
We were 18 years old.
Yes, you were kids, and you were given a gun and told that skit.
We were given a gun.
Yeah.
And there were guys who walked patrol on the border of what was then Southwest Africa and Angola.
Yes.
There were guys who went on insurgency operations into Angola, into Zambia, into Lesotho.
Yes, into all these neighboring countries. Yeah.
And they were 18 years old with a gun. And they weren't allowed into a nightclub in Pretoria because they were under 21.
But yet
that's how bizarre it was.
They had a gun and they could shoot
exactly.
and kill.
But they couldn't go and dance. You know,
Yes.
it's bizarre.
Wow.
It was a bizarre time in our lives. It really was.
And was there ever a time when you felt this is not right? When during that moment?
Yeah, you know what? At that stage, you're in a different space because you have been conditioned.
Yes, from quite early on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You did cadets at school.
Oh,
and so
yes.
there was a way that they moved you into that
slowly,
system.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget when I came out of the army and went to Rhodes University.
Yeah.
And suddenly you get into journalism, speech and drama, you're in the arts section, and you're exposed to a whole load of
people,
a lot of information
yes.
and people. And I'll never forget, we had an incident on campus at Rhodes University. I in my third year, I was elected onto the SRC, which was the first NUSAS SRC at Rhodes University.
Okay.
So we were part of the National Union of South African Students, which was associated with the UDF
and all of that.
the liberation organizations.
Yeah.
And there was a protest march that happened on campus, and the police came onto campus and shambucked the students.
Yes. Yeah.
And at that stage, the Vice Chancellor, Derek Henderson, called for a full, because the police had come onto campus, he called for a full protest, which in terms of the law, he was entitled to do.
Okay.
As long as you go on protest and have a protest march through the town of Grahamstown, as long as you're wearing your robes and hoods and all the rest of it, it is a formal university protest, and they are entitled to do that, or were entitled to do.
That's interesting.
And he called that protest, and we went on that protest, and as part of the SRC, we were obviously there, and we had all the organizations behind us, one of which was, at that stage, an organization called the Black Students Movement, the BSM. And BSM at that stage was headed by the late Mvuzo Mbebe.
Wow.
And
he was with the SABC.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
And I'll never forget getting back to the SRC offices. It had been a blindingly hot day. And we had all been processing down properly, and BSM was behind the SRC.
Yeah.
And they were toying down. Aish, aish. BW Bota. And everyone just, and we got back to the SRC offices, and Vuzo was never ever a small man.
No.
He was
always
a
been
lot. And he came into the SRC and he was sweating, and I'll never forget it. He came up to me and he said, "Yo, Jeremy, freedom must come. I'm sick and tired to toy."
And there were many more years to come. Exactly. Freedom must come now.
I'm sick and tired to toy.
You say you were at Supersport, gained a bit of a TV experience. You didn't last long there.
No, because what happened at Supersport was that Gary Bailey at the time was doing morning sport on 702 at the same time. And because of commitments that he had, he needed to change to afternoon sport. And he came to me and he said, "Would you consider doing the morning sport on 702?" And I said, "Yeah, fine."
Okay.
And I went and started working with John Burks and Gary Edwards.
Wow.
And that was one of the biggest learning curves I've had.
That's why I said, wow. As you say John Burks, immediately I pause.
You know, from a music radio point of view, I think the person I've learned the most amount from when I was at Capital Radio was Kevin Savage.
Yes.
When I went into the talk show side of it, John Burks taught me the art of two things: the art of timing on radio and the art of using characters on radio.
Yeah, which is something you still do even now.
Yeah.
which is a makeup of a breakfast show, really.
It's part of it.
It
has to be.
It's different people play different roles.
Yeah.
And listeners fall in love with different people.
Exactly.
They may not like the whole group,
No.
but they absolutely love that one.
And you know what? It's creating the persona on air that works because each person fulfills a task. I've worked with Samantha Cowan for many years.
Even now, you're still with her,
And some of the filthiest lines that I've come up with on air, and I'll tell you this, and you can edit it out.
Don't tell me they come from her.
They come from her.
Oh, no.
But she can't use those lines on air because she is the mother figure. She's the handbrake.
She's the no, guys.
Exactly.
You can't say that.
Yeah, exactly.
After she told you the line, she said, you can't say that.
Exactly. And I use the line and she'll go, oh, you can't say that on the radio. And you're going,
switch off the mic. Yeah, she says it back to you.
But it's all about how the persona works.
That's
on
it,
air. And that's how you create a proper morning team.
That's it. Yes.
Is by getting the right characters together.
Yeah. I wish all program managers knew that.
You know what? Program managers know very little. As a presenter, I've been through I don't know how many.
Yes, I can only imagine.
And you just go, okay. You listen to them and you say, thanks very much. Yeah, cheers. Goodbye. But the best program manager I ever had was the first program manager of Highveld when Primedia took it over.
Okay.
And we started the Rude Awakening. It was a guy by the name of Malcolm Freed, who is now one of the... He went on to work for Bloomberg in Europe. Yeah. And Malcolm, I think now, is the marketing director of Discovery Worldwide.
Okay. So it's probably not even based here.
No, he's based in London.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Malcolm was a brilliant... He understood what he needed to let go and let run.
And let it be.
Let it be.
Because that's what happens with breakfast radio very often.
You don't hold back.
No.
You let them run, and when they go too far, you then rein them in.
You're like a parent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, he came into the studio. We'd been on air for about a year.
Yeah.
And he came in with this file.
Yeah.
And sorry, Jonathan, I'm going to use you as a prop. And he came in with this file, and he went... And I said, what's that?
Yeah.
He said, that is the annual report of the Broadcast Complaints Commission of South Africa.
How big was it?
To ICASA. And that's going to Parliament.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
And I said, so? He said, read the front index. And I picked it up and I opened it, and there was the front index. And it started listing
the stations
and the complaints.
Yeah.
And it was Rude Awakening 94.7, Rude Awakening 94.7, Rude Awakening 94.7, Gareth Cliff 5FM, Rude Awakening 94.7. And I said, okay, what are you trying to tell me here? He said, 49% of all complaints laid against radio in this country, nationwide, are from your show. And I said, okay, what are you trying to tell me? He said, if it doesn't look like that next year, I'm not renewing your contract. That's what I went, yes, I like my program manager.
This is the best ever.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, you're still a good friend of the BCCSA, even now.
Yo.
Because we were meant to have this chat a week ago. And we were told,
there was a minor problem there.
There was a minor problem to do with something you said on the radio.
Yeah. Well, you know what, we say stuff. I mean, David, you've got to continue to push to the boundaries.
I'm clean, man. Yeah. There has to be a clean guy in the group. I'm the driver. I'm the guy who will go with you to the party. I will dance just as much, but I will drive because I didn't drink. I'm that guy. And I set in for Fat Joe, because Fat Joe is like you. He does the show just before mine. He said something about gay people, and it got him in trouble.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes, it got him in trouble.
Yeah, you see, that's why I love Joe. That's why I love Fresh.
Exactly. They say stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there'll always be that guy in the group who's nerdy, who'll never do anything wrong, and that's me. I set in for Joe. I did clean radio, and I left it the way I found it. Well, I found it in a little bit of a mess.
So you just cleaned up a bit?
I cleaned up a bit and walked away. He came in again. 2 days later, there was another complaint. It's like, oh, boy.
It's Joe, my man.
So you happy to be friends with us?
I've known Joe and I've known Fresh for years and years and years, and it's always nice to bump into them at different gigs, and we just go, so what are you up to? Goes,
so what case are you dealing with now?
This and this and this. You go,
what offense have you done?
Why didn't I hear that line?
Jeez. Wow, man. There's a guy in the UK, Chris Moyles.
Yes.
I've followed his style of radio for quite a bit, and I've always, every time I listen to him, I see your face. He's just as crazy. He's just as, and it's not, the word is not crazy. He's just as liberal or liberated to feel like he can say whatever he wants. Who's inspired your radio over the years? Or you stopped finding inspiration from external sources?
You know what? I've now got to a stage where when you say who's inspired me, there are the people I've discussed already, Savage and Burks and those guys. But what inspires me now is your normal South African citizen.
Yeah.
Because I'm finding so much humor.
True.
And we are starting to laugh with each other.
That's it. That is so true.
And
you watch Twitter, it looks crazy.
And you know what? You can start using that humor now. Because at the end of the day, laughter is what is going to
save us.
Heal this nation.
Yeah, that's so true.
And the please God, the time comes when we can all start laughing with each other. Not at each other.
Yes,
with each other.
Yeah.